Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Depends from where you are dialing in today. We are delighted that you are joining our monthly IERG webinar. This is the last one for the year in December, and then we'll be back in January. So a very, very warm welcome to all our members who are dialing in today, and more importantly, to all our guests who are joining us for the first time today. Just very briefly, IERG is an organization open for international executives. It's a diverse, rapidly growing organization of international people, passionate internationalists who live internationally. And this is who IERG is. For most of us, this is a lifestyle choice that really defines us in our view of the world in which we live and work. We are recognized for bringing international thought leaders to our virtual webinar podium, and today is no exception to that. And I'll introduce our guest in a short while. Please follow us on LinkedIn. If you search for IERG on LinkedIn, you'll find us. Please follow us so you can get the news first in your mailbox. And for more information on membership and our upcoming events, please visit our website, iergonline.org. A special word of thanks also to our corporate sponsors today. So that's about us. We are extremely happy to present to you today Mr. Cory Skinner, who's the CEO and founder of RoadLaunch. He is specialized in blockchain, supply chain, and logistics software platforms in artificial intelligence, Internet of Things web platforms. By integrating blockchain technology, RoadLaunch is focusing on logistics and supply chain management, automated quote framework, digitized freight capacity management, as well as FactR, token-based wallet for instant cross-border settlement. Cory is a patent holder and leads for a highly skilled team that architects, designs, and develops supply chain and logistics software systems and AI Internet of Things web platforms, and is currently focused in an intelligent transportation management system that incorporates decentralized ledger technologies such as Hyperledger and Stellar Blockchain. Cory, this is our very first webinar on the topic of blockchain, and we are so delighted to have you here today. Now, this is something that we haven't covered before, although we do know that this is the buzz in town. Great many people are using blockchain for a great variety of reasons, and we know it, of course, primarily from cryptocurrencies. But thank you very much for coming in today. And may I ask also, Cory, for those of us who are perhaps not so skilled on the concept of blockchain, if you could maybe just give us a bit of a backdrop into the technology, and then we would love to see it in action in your specific environment. So enough from my side, over to you, and thank you very much, Cory.
Great, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and hi everyone on today's webinar. As Jacques mentioned, I am lucky to be the founder and CEO for a couple of organizations, RoadLaunch being one on smart digital logistics, and the second one, as you can see here, FactR, which is also a blockchain-based digital wallet for trust, instant settlement, audit, and reconciliation, as well focusing on global logistics and transaction management. For those of you that have some background on blockchain, then absolutely fantastic. And then over the course of the next little while, we'll go through the process of talking about what blockchain means, specifically around how we've implemented Hyperledger for RoadLaunch, and then Stellar for FactR, and how we've gone through the process of, at least for logistics supply chain, how we've digitized, elevated positions of the actors and players involved, and of course done next generation settlement. So moving ahead a little bit, here's me. Feel free to connect with me either here over questions or of course offline via LinkedIn, whatever the case might be. But what's exciting here is that over the last years, we've seen some very, very exciting new technologies and opportunities for operations management to become very much what we call next generation. So what was typically complex processes and the the ability to take what is those complex processes and be able to elevate the position of all the people involved. The idea of creating that trust within systems and technologies was tough to do, whereas today we have those opportunities and those technologies available to us. So with RoadLaunch, which is an IBM and SAP partner, we are now taking those complex processes and adding a level of trust and transparency to them, which is quite novel, and we're quite happy about it. Our mission is just that. We started off in the IoT space, so digitizing the amount of available capacity in ground freight carriers. We then moved ahead quite quickly to be able to take advantage of other opportunities. So we added layers of artificial intelligence for what was securing that capacity and automating the whole processes with levels of intelligence. And then from there, we moved ahead to wrap the whole process of ERP integrations or other data sources to pull them in. We then layered on top of that automated quoting, taking all of the commercial terms and the transaction management, turning those into automated or at least intelligent order management, dispatch, and transaction settlement. So what is blockchain? So blockchain, if you are looking from the outside, can be many things to many people, and depending on the view that you take, it could be Bitcoin, it could be Ethereum based, it could be EOS, it could be Stellar, it could be Ripple. There's so many options. But taking a step back, it's just it's really not just that. It's a new way of looking at decentralization of data and being able to take what is typical centralized data sources and spreading this out. Now there's different ways to accomplish this, and there's different technologies today that allow us to do blockchain. We'll talk about today how we used 2 levels of blockchain for RoadLaunch and FactR. What is really awesome about this whole technology is that depending on your use case and the problem you'd like to solve, it can remove a lot of the previous pain points you saw with maybe web services or EDI or machine-to-machine messaging and so forth, while adding a level of transparency and trust, automation, and so on. How does it work? At a very high level here, without getting into many of the technical details, we see that the transactions occurs and then the parties or levels of consensus happens where as transactions are recorded in blocks, those transactions have components added to them. Those blocks are now put together in order. As they're put together in order and those transaction hashes get appended, it becomes blocks in the chain, which is basically where the name comes from. And then as they're chained together, they see this whole level of open and transparency and trust. Changing gears just a little bit, focusing on where RoadLaunch started and where we are today, here's the problem that we like to solve. So as I mentioned, we're in logistics supply chain, and we wanted to be able to create an ecosystem, to be able to create a network within the parties in ground freight logistics or air freight or sea freight, brokers, third-party intermediaries, where if there's good people doing good work within those ecosystems, we wanted to be able to take not only the positions of these companies and elevate them, but remove all of the inefficiencies within it. So think points of friction. Really what we wanted to focus on is taking those orders from a medium to large enterprise type of situation and then bring them truly to what they're looking for, which is, I have freight, I need that freight to be moved. And now whether it's a load going from point A to point B and it's just ground freight and it's just city to city, or it's a little bit bigger and it's complex and it's something a little bit more intermodal, could we put together a system and a process that allows those large enterprise customers to be able to reach those parties and to be able to transact in a way that is truly simple yet sophisticated, and then at the same time lower the whole supply chain cost of doing business, whether it's on the payables end, the receivables end, audit, or reconciliation. Really, what should be a simple process is not really all that simple. In the example that we just had, where you had a freight, a load, or some type of cargo that needs to be moved from point A to point B, that should be a very, very simple process. I'm a shipping company and I have to move a pallet from city A to city B, but then a lot of things happen in the middle. You need customs paperwork, or you realize that maybe it's the wrong type of equipment that's been dispatched, or the weather or traffic, and all of these things that get in the middle means that what should be the whole process of from the customer getting to the carrier is kind of looking like this view. There's systems and there's issues and there's other parties. There's more archaic or more traditional ways of communication, such as phone, fax, emails. And then you've got all the other parties involved, like manufacturers or other systems or warehouses, DCs or distribution centers and so forth. So just because of the nature of how this business happens, it's not exactly easy to just take that load and what should be that load from point A to point B and get the digital capacity, secure the carrier, dispatch the order, agree on the commercial terms, and then have all the payments and processes happen, very quickly or very frictionless. What we like to say that we've done here with RoadLaunch Digital Freight is work towards fixing all of that inherent complexity and all of those pain points or points of failure. So now where you see that a customer really just needs access to the driver, even if that driver is part of their private fleet, so the company has their own trucks and trailers and they just want to move their equipment, or in a situation where those drivers are contracted. So they go out to a partner carrier, or they work through a broker or another intermediary to secure that capacity and give them the paperwork to pick up and deliver the load. All of the complexity that could be there is now kind of put into this situation on our RoadLaunch Digital Freight platform. So everything from the customers to the freight and cargo to warehousing, whether it's at the supplier or a distribution level, to the trucks and trailers on contracted or private fleet, we match all this with intelligent matching, the asset visibility, so the cargo and the actual trailers and the other equipment that's needed, a level of fleet management, so managing the trucks and the trailers and the drivers, or for sea freight, points of communication at those ports, etc. And then building it in a way where you don't necessarily have to go ahead and buy specific sensors. Our system is very IoT agnostic, so if you have sensors on your equipment or your freight or components of your fleet today, RoadLaunch allows you to pull that in through our developer kit. And then, of course, we offer as well an intelligent mobile app for dispatch and all of the transactions management. Here within this whole process, you can see that it has Hyperledger. And so the operations that you have today in that logistics supply chain, coupled with the business relationships that are there today. So the shippers and the carriers, the contracted fleets, the relationships with customs brokers or freight brokers or third-party logistics providers, those relationships today are now mirrored on the system through Hyperledger. Hyperledger is the solution that we chose for blockchain in order to mirror those relationships on semi-permissions private smart contracts. And so the relationship today of those people that are involved are the same ones that are mirrored tomorrow, except the difference is that they're mirrored on a blockchain-enabled smart contract. Here are some of the components that allows us through our solution today to bring trust and visibility, traceability, auditability, settlement, and finally reconciliation. Because we can mirror all of those relationships, wrap it all in permissions-based smart contracts, things like providing time-based or instant settlement to the people involved is now an option. It was not an option previously. It was a lot of traditional payables or receivables models of net terms and cutting POs and working within payment systems, ERPs, CRMs, and et cetera. Whereas today we can have a digital wallet solution that allows the people to interact directly. It's peer-to-peer. It's all based on the smart contract. And through our finance partners, we can go ahead and create a system of payments that are direct between the parties without maybe necessarily going to a merchant service for payments, which now allows us to not only do them instantly, but we can also do them based on time. And we can also do them based on lower fees because of the way the system works. It's trusted and proven. So with Hyperledger, we are an IBM partner, and so we use IBM blockchain platform. So it's really easy and really scalable, and it's also trusted and proven. RoadLaunch being an IBM partner means that we can now go ahead and onboard people onto our system or help with other systems that are out there within logistics supply chain to become part of the member network. And there's a level of credibility and trust because, well, it's on a scalable, secure system. And of course, it's trusted transactions management. So previously, while you may have had great relationships within the business, if something went wrong and you had to be able to audit what happened, it was still a very arduous or manual process, where today, and I'll show you within our TrueFreight tool, auditing what happened on a single order or a whole bunch of orders is very, very quick, and it's very, very simple and also very automated. So here's a couple of the components, and you've heard me talk about these a little bit already today, but we have basically two parts of the solution. And of course, what we'll do is I'll go ahead and do a quick demo of these to show how does RoadLaunch work with Hyperledger Fabric on IBM blockchain platform. And that allows us to take all of the quotes to digitizing capacity, the automation of orders, all the way to final delivery, tracking it, seeing the smart contracts and the transaction IDs, and then final closing out either on multiple orders with up to 95% automation, or on an individual order where you want to give it a little bit more closer care because of many reasons. Then on the right side with FactR, this is our digital wallet solution. FactR is based on Stellar, which allows for cross-border settlement based on most accepted fiats. And because it's peer-to-peer and married with a system like RoadLaunch, they work quite well together. The FactR component is a little different than RoadLaunch with Hyperledger, of course. Hyperledger allows us to do the permissions-based smart contracts, which is absolutely fantastic, but it didn't allow us to do anything from a finance standpoint. Stellar, on the other hand, is built just for that purpose. So we allow the freight carriers, whether they're ground or sea or air, to be able to take a look at not only all the interactions and the whole transaction management, but also to take a look at what would settlement look like for, say, that freight load that went from location A to location B. What's interesting about this model is that even if it's air freight that's coming in, you're probably still going to need some type of ground freight or a ground freight carrier to be able to pick up that load at the airport, or if it's the sea freight carrier that comes in at any of our larger ports or terminals, you still need that ground freight transportation company with the chassis type of setup to come in and grab that sea freight container and deliver it to the final destination. In any of these instances down, we can take everything that's in that transaction, the cargo and the fleet and the freight management component, and we can marry that now over to a digital wallet. We can then do all the things like the cross-border settlement, we can do it at fractions of a penny, and we can do this from nearly any of the world's major fiats. So it's very, very interesting and also very, very powerful. We touched on this a little bit, but what's interesting about the whole situation of blockchain is that previously, if you were to pull in all these data from all these systems, you could use only the traditional models. And even today on RoadLaunch, we have a developer kit that allows for the APIs to bring in anything from freight and transactions management from air or the ocean or just other platforms on ground freight. The difference is, though, now within the RoadLaunch platform, we can then take all those transactions when we get them and wrap them on smart contracts. And what's really, really interesting and what gets me really excited is the fact that now we can actually go upwards in the process. So while we do it today on RoadLaunch to be able to provide the transaction management and write them on blockchain smart contracts, we can now extend that back into other components. And so we can go back to our partners on air or sea or platform partners, and we can say, if you'd like, we can invite you into our member network on IBM blockchain platform, on the Hyperledger fabric. You can now become part of the chain code that we have, or you can actually create your own private channel, and all that information is now trusted, it's secure, it's transparent, or you can have permissions-based channels in the permissions-based smart contracts, so that while it's important to have trust and transparency amongst your organization and your transactions that you're doing, you don't have to share it with the entire world. Doing that, of course, allows for better transaction management, performance, scale, security, and so forth. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, while we focus on ground freight today being a little bit larger, so think, larger shipping freight, pallets, half pallets, larger types of cargo and pieces like that, we also can now extend it into last mile partners, because once that freight is now delivered to a warehouse and a lot of those couriers need to deliver to the customer at the last mile, we're even working with last mile partners to be able to extend what is that smart contract and that final delivery of that parcel or Christmas gift, whatever the case might be. Very, very interesting and also very, very sophisticated. The things that we like to focus on, and I think we've covered on it here, is really just being smart and trusted, being scalable, and providing those instant payments. So today, especially in time-sensitive or high-value type of cargo, knowing exactly what's happening and also being able to provide visibility into what's happened in the past in terms of why did that go wrong, or maybe where did it go missing, we can provide that visibility today, and we can provide it on a level that maybe previously couldn't be provided, and we'll show you what that looks like shortly. Being scalable is also very important as well, because if you were to do 100 transactions a minute, that's great. But as you've probably seen, there's other blockchain systems in the world today that gives you trust and transparency, yes, but they just don't scale. And so taking what is those permissions-based smart contracts, mirroring them on the operations in your business today, and then hosting this on servers that are trusted and enterprise ready, means that you don't have to worry about scale, and you don't have to worry about the security of it. And then on the other side, the payment is the payment. At the end of the day, we're in the enterprise space, and business-to-business transactions means payables and receivables. So giving an option to be able to do this in a way that's very, very smart, sophisticated, and frictionless is also very important to us. Here are some of the highlights and value that we bring to logistics supply chain. A lot of interesting things that happens with actually a lot of low effort or low value. And so what I mean by that is bottom right-hand corner on instant trust. In RoadLaunch, when that quote comes in and we interlock all the commercial terms between the shipper or the broker to the ground freight carrier as an example, we're already creating the smart contract. And because it's auditable very, very quickly, you can actually give a level of validation that is in seconds. So tomorrow when something is going wrong with the freight delivery and you want to know why, well, you can actually see this information, trust that what you see, and you know that you can trust that only the right people are able to see it. And we do this in a record amount of time. Creating the smart contracts and the escrows for our finance partner are instant, and our integrations, depending on what your environment looks like, are very, very quickly, which proves not only that we can do it, but if you're in an organization that's considering how you use a blockchain platform because it's very popular today and you're thinking it might be able to solve some of your problems, at least for us, our integrations take really, really, really small amounts of time. And this is just because of the way our development kit is set up and the way we've integrated with our platform, being IoT agnostic and being able to plug into ERPs, etc. And then, of course, on instant settlement, changing topics here a little bit, because we're powered by Stellar. Stellar is very, very quick, very, very scalable, and it just simply makes sense from a settlement and reconciliation standpoint. Some of the case studies, some of the things we've done. RoadLaunch as a company is not old, less than 2 years old, but we've already been able to take what is the initial starting place of just ground freight and now extending this to sea terminals on sea carriers and being able to move that type of freight. And we've entered into pilots that allowed us to do great work to add trust, transparency, and process automation in places like a free trade zone. On the instant settlement piece, we've already onboarded thousands of ground freight carriers. And because of that, now with the FactR wallet, we can not only add a level of speed and trust and transparency to what is a typical owner-operator, or what they call a microfleet, or the size of a company that typically has maybe, say, 10 trucks or less within their company. We can give them tools that are very, very easy to use. They're very sophisticated, and we can give them instant settlement options at a cost that's a lot lower than what traditionally would be offered. And then on air cargo, now we're working with a couple of platform partners to onboard over the next few years, upwards of 50 air cargo companies that want access to trusted ground freight carriers on the RoadLaunch platform. So we'll flip over to a demo now. I'm going to go ahead and show you first the RoadLaunch platform, and then, of course, over to FactR. Doing a bit of a time check here, and it's 12:29, so I think we should be in a great position. But first, let's log into RoadLaunch. We'll go ahead and take a look at RoadLaunch here, all the way from quote to final delivery, wrapping that in Hyperledger for everything from digital capacity to order management, the commercial terms, the blockchain component, and then what is True Freight, so our audit and reconciliation tool, right down to the block on the Hyperledger, and then, of course, FactR. So let's log in. What I am logging in as here is a very typical small transportation company. You can see here that we've got just 4 drivers, 3 trucks, 4 trailers, some sensors, and we have everything that shows us not only where all the customers are, but you can manage those customers and view the freight that's available at those locations, as well as their site locations. So think warehouses, distribution facilities, cross docks, whatever the case might be. You can see our trailers along with all the trailer sensors, and of course the drivers themselves. What we also do is we're able to show these companies how many orders that's currently happening, how many orders that are already delivered, ones that are completed, all the quotes that are available in the system, their digital wallet, loads that they have active, so it's maybe in transit currently, and then active loads that they've posted as well. We marry all of this with the order dashboard, so you can see exactly where all the orders are, right down to the details of the status. And then as well, what we do is we give a location map of the details of the trucks, the trailers, and even the location history of where their equipment or their drivers have been. So what does it mean? When we digitize the capacity, we use a tool called FreightFlex. So even though they're a small company and they've added just 4 trailers, we can go ahead and show them a way to be able to digitize the capacity of trucks and trailers in real time. And while we do this, and they can do it manually, or our system goes ahead and updates it for them automatically based on the orders that are available. By doing this and knowing the type of equipment or the order history based on the drivers and what's been dispatched, we can go ahead and do intelligent load matching for them in real time. When we do that, this then becomes the ability for them to be able to create quotes and loads. And so the quotes and loads are based on the base rates. So how much from this location to this location, or this location to this location. And then from there, they can do anything from create the orders directly from the post, clone them, view the load statistics, go ahead and delete them off the system, and etc. Those quotes and orders now, and what was that intelligent match freight, that now becomes a system of all of the, not only the base rates, but also we can take all of the other information around what's the commercial terms of this tariff on ground freight. So anything from fuel surcharge based on a percentage or a flat fee, or even a fee per mile, a factoring fee, hazardous materials, storage such as cross docks, tarps, and other equipment. And we can now mirror all of this and create automated orders or manually created orders. And you can see here that that's the option to do that here. We allow all of these companies to see not only all the status of it, but they can share the status with any of their customers or partners. And in a case where all the orders are now in some level of process, we can view all the details. And we'll take a look at one here for delivered. Much like ordering a pizza, it's everything from the quote to create it all the way to the order delivered and final payment processing. But we also allow them to see exactly what happened on it from a high level. So whether it's been pending or on hold, the orders dispatched or final delivered, all of the details on it, the flat rates, the commercial terms, etc. But we also generate all of the documents that are very specific to that type of freight or cargo order, such as the commercial invoice or rate confirmation, bill of lading, or electronically created proof of delivery. But we're not really talking about blockchain yet. There's nothing here that is very novel, nothing that is different from maybe any other type of freight or digital freight platform out there, except for this component. So now on this order, if I wanted to take a look at quote to order delivery and say, what does it look like from a blockchain history standpoint? We can see all of those quotes and orders. And now we give all the information based on the Hyperledger blockchain. So here, right back to when the quote was created, to when the order was picked up, to when the order was delivered, we've automatically generated transaction IDs along with all the date time. And you can see here that this is a hyperlink. So I can literally go back in time to when the quote was created, click on this transaction ID, and see exactly where this was on that permissions-based smart contract. If I go back here a little bit further, and I wanted to be able to say, okay, well, the order was delivered, but there was a problem. You know, the driver may have been on time, but the shipper wasn't ready. Or maybe the driver was late when he was going to pick it up. Or the driver was on time, but the shipper wasn't ready to load his or her truck. And now the driver's in detention. All of this information allows us to do not only instant settlement, so the payment being processed, but also we can audit the whole situation. We can audit the whole process, and this is True Freight. So by clicking on True Freight, you can see here now that it automatically populates the order and shipment, and this is just for a single order. We can see the destination and origins. We can go ahead and go back right to a quote ID, a single transaction ID, or the order and shipment. And what's really, really brilliant is you can see these transaction IDs, where it is, the order ID, transaction time, and even right down to the driver location when those statuses were changed. You can export all of this data for an individual order, or if you need to be able to audit or reconcile, you know, dozens or hundreds of orders, you can do this, and we've already audited an order here in just a couple clicks. But it even gets better because we can even see from an IBM blockchain standpoint, all of the services are online, all of the connection details, all of the blockchain stats, right down to the detail of each individual order. And then even right here, right down to the block ID on the network. And let's please keep in mind that I am still only a company that has 4 drivers, a couple of trucks, and I just want to be able to manage my whole process of quote to customers, final pickup, final destination, and final payment. So it's quite interesting, and it's a level of visibility that we're able to do absolutely instantly. So this is, you know, the whole process of a ground freight carrier getting a load. It's matched to those trucks and trailers. Now those loads can come in from any number of locations, whether it's a direct shipper, whether it's a load board integration, whether it's an ERP implementation. And we even white label the solution so that within your company, if you wanted logistics supply chain visibility, you can go ahead and get this right within your organization for your private or contracted fleet, and not use an open, a wide open roadlaunch.com. So I'll stop there for a second and flip gears just a little tiny bit, because the piece that we haven't really talked about was the payment processing. This is the permissions-based smart contract, and then on all of the orders, you can see how they're all shared with parties, and they can easily be shared with parties on specific orders. And then from here, of course, we know all the commercial terms and everything else, but we want to be able to pay that. We want to be able to pay that company, work with a finance partner to even go upstream from a supply chain finance standpoint. So let's talk about FactR. The FactR wallet looks just like this. And now for this, we've said that it's just a demo wallet. I will show you the actual FactR portal here in a second, but for this, we can go ahead and see that, there's a level of tokens, which are stablecoin, that we work on fiat-based escrows. So we actually tell them exactly what they are on a one-to-one value in US dollars, as an example. We can see all of the transaction history, which was incoming and what was outgoing, the amounts and who is the issuer, the timestamps, etc. And because we can even transact within the system, today if you want to send money to a business partner or even a friend, you usually need to pull in some type of third party, whereas here, as long as they're all in the same system, you can send your tokens to another person and you can send that for free instantly in any fiat on their wallet on their side. We even allow for companies, and we work with finance partners to be able to create escrows, which takes the whole process of the quote to final delivery wrapped in that smart contract, backed by actual money, not a fluctuating cryptocurrency like you might see out there. And our finance partners are now able to go backwards into the stream at the time of quote because of those transaction IDs and say, I know this carrier, I know this shipper, they're trusted entities, you're trusted partners. And now, because there's a level of automation and trust and simplicity, settlement is not only instant, but it's with trusted parties. So there's a level of lowered friction, there's a level of enhanced trust and transparency. And because of the way the digital wallet works, the processing transaction times is fast, and the overhead on it is really, really low because it's not a typical merchant service type of thing. Moving over to FactR, I'm going to log in now as an application. You can see here that this is a demo wallet with some different types of accounts. You can log in as a finance partner, an administrator, or what's an application. And so for an application, it means that this is much like your platform or your system today. You have those invoices, you have those payables, you have the receivables. That connected into your system is your application. We are allowed to we allow through FactR for them to connect up to any platform, any application, and you can do everything from manage your applications to your wallets, the finance partners, the revenue you're generating, the escrows, which are either pending or in process, and the amount of transactions, right down to the assets that are there. You can see all of your wallet instantly. And then from an application standpoint, you can go ahead and register a new finance partner. You can see the existing finance partners. You can see the application information and all of your transaction history. And you can cash out, transfer funds, see all of the information in real time. And you can do it anywhere in the world. So I will stop there. That is the end of the demo and the presentation. And maybe Jacques, you could join back in for a second, and we can move on to the next part of the presentation today.
Cory, thank you very much. Hugely interesting to see how blockchain has worked in a specific environment. specifically in the kind of tried and tested supply chain logistics environment. We have a couple of questions already from our guest in Hungary, Jim Diager. He's a supply chain in the telco industry, and he's asking, removing records in light of GDPR, so removing records from blockchain is not possible. So how will the recording of personal data work under the right to be forgotten clause of GDPR?
Amazing question. Very good question. In fact, we faced the same one with RoadLaunch earlier this year, when we were going through the process of creating our smart contracts, making them permissions based, and being able to add the level of trust and transparency that we knew was going to be requested within this situation. We also knew that if we put any of the information for the people, for their organizations on the blockchain, that it could not be removed. So in essence, we couldn't allow them to be to have the right to be forgotten. So the trick here is to make sure that if there's information that you need to take out later, just don't put it on the smart contract. Don't put it on the blockchain at all. Keep it within your platform and your application, and you won't have any problem with that with something like GDPR going forward.
Thanks very much. A follow-up question also from Jim. He's attended multiple blockchain workshops, and it seems that blockchain is many things to many people. How do you determine that blockchain can be used in his organization? Is there a checklist, for example?
I don't know if there's also a very good question. I'm not sure if there's exactly a checklist. Because the observation is correct. Blockchain is many things to many people, and depending on the problems that you're looking to solve, it may not be a fit. It seems that if you're looking for a level of transparency and trust between multiple parties, blockchain could be a good fit. If you're looking for a level of sophistication and automation within processes where you want it to be able to audit quick and easy later, blockchain could be a good fit. But at the same time, and I'll say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, there is a lot of people out there that are trying to jump on the blockchain hype and the blockchain bandwagon, and they're simply trying to put square pegs in round holes. So just because you think blockchain might be good, it may not be. So take time and do some due diligence before you start, hiring blockchain developers and kicking off projects, if you will.
Thanks. Just a reminder to the audience, we still have some time for questions, so please add your questions on the chat box provided in the control panel. Next question, do you need the transparency provided by the blockchain where all participants can in fact see the chain?
No, not at all. For some use cases, that's very, very important. For other use cases, it's less important, but could add value. It really is a case-by-case basis. Depending on the problem you'd like to solve or how you'd like to get forward from what we have tried to do here with RoadLaunch and FactR and being next generation. It depends on really where you are in your life cycle and I guess how far you'd like to be able to go with blockchain within your projects or your program portfolio.
Okay. Also from Jim, what are the cost drivers for implementing blockchain and how do they differ from a centralized system? Is it more expensive, i.e. you need more computing power, or cheaper?
Well, it depends on the situation. So if your organization and your partner organizations are willing to go into a consortium together, this means that it's now going to be a shared cost. What I mean by that is, let's say that there's 3 companies involved, 3 companies have 3 different systems, and those 3 different systems are willing to be able to go on to Hyperledger into the member network on a channel. Now the costs are, well, they're kind of shared 3 ways. And within those 3 systems, you now just have to be able to write your code to write to that blockchain smart contract into Hyperledger as an example. But you do that in silos using a very, very standard developer kit. And so what I mean by that is I'll go over to roadlaunch.com to developer. And so for us as an example, and for our freight blockchain API, you can see here that anyone that wants to join our Freight Blockchain API as an owner, they would have to be able to set these types of statuses. Or for quotes and shipments, as long as they initialize a shipment and they follow this types of formats, well, they're all going to be able to join their blockchain together, join the same member network together. So if it's architected maybe the same way and it's very collaborative, the costs are somewhat spread out.
Another question here, which I guess is a good question to ask, specifically, so where is the value creation in blockchain? Is it in comparison to centralized systems?
It really depends, and I know I say that a lot, but it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you have levels of trust and transparency that a centralized system doesn't give you today, then there's a lot of value in it. So as a quick example, we're talking to a large company now that spends millions of dollars writing freight contracts with brokers and intermediaries, only to then have those contracts violated, and then that same company now spends millions of dollars in litigation supporting them. So really all that large company needed was the trust between where is the shipment and where is the truck and when it's finally delivered. So unless they don't need a broker involved or some type of intermediary, we can give them instant trust, validation, and transparency, so they actually see value in removing a lot of the costs of contract generation and litigation of them. So depending on where you are, maybe it's a different type of value.
A question from one of our guests, Jess Hurwitz, for you, Cory. How much are you transacting per day currently through your digital wallet in dollar terms?
Very good question. So today, our FactR portal, we actually started doing the design on FactR early this year. We finished up a lot of our development unit integration testing only in late Q2. We just finished our security testing on FactR like literally a week ago, and so today we have several parties that are involved in using FactR for pilots, but FactR today is not fully in the market and will be released for gold public release in January 2019. So we're not transacting a lot of value on FactR today.
A question from Ernesto Cohn, also regarding FactR. Is FactR Wallet applicable only to freight carriers, or can it apply to seller to buyer in a B2B environment?
It certainly can. In fact, the way we've designed FactR, it means that we're actually actor or player agnostic, and we're actually even industry agnostic. So if you have a system today that has a smart contract, we can literally bolt FactR onto the end of it. But in a situation where you're even just a small company that does, significant revenue in the tens of millions, as an example, using something like a QuickBooks type of system, if you want to even use that for FactR, but your business is just landscaping or something like that, you can even use FactR for those types of use cases. You can be the supplier, you can be a third-party actor in the network, or the final recipient of the receivable.
Another question from Ernesto, Cory. Working with the trade credit insurance platform, can your platform be used as an audit?
Our platform can be and already is used as an audit. So in the cases where we see orders, we can now transact and do audit, reconciliation, and not only the settlement instruments, but we actually take it upstream. And so what I mean by that is today here on an order that's delivered, we view the details. We can now go into TrueFreight to see exactly what happens, what was true, what was not, right down to those transaction IDs. But now on our back end within the smart contracts, instead of looking at one, you can now look at tens, dozens, or hundreds, or even thousands of orders. All of that reconciliation and audit can happen almost instantly. And in fact, now we're working on pieces that allow for a level of AI to do all of this audit and reconciliation for it automatically. So you just see a dashboard, and you can dive in and take a look at the exceptions versus what is the normal transactions management.
We have another question from Jim. How can the information from carriers be trusted, i.e. root cause of delays, etc.? The experience is that carriers and LSP tend to hide the root cause unless the input is carrier agnostic, i.e. attaching a live tracker to the shipment. Is blockchain able to overcome this level of trust?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good question. Again, I'm going back to our developer portal, but what we've done here is we've allowed for two things to happen. Our driver API and our mobile application API allows us to be IoT agnostic, because we know that the transportation carriers have things like electronic logging devices, or ELD. They may have already invested, thousands and thousands of dollars in trailer sensors, or they might already have other applications that they're using, mobile apps, other platforms. We can consume any of this IoT data, and by consuming the IoT data, we update the Freight blockchain smart contract wherever we can, and we automate it. This is why then on TrueFreight, we can see this information, such as the smart contract being updated in real time by the latitude and longitude as an example.
And the last question, unless if there are any other ones, the last one from Jim, which is, I guess, a relevant question to many organizations who don't have blockchain, where there could be some degree of suspicion or they consider the hype. So Jim's asking, how can he get blockchain introduced in his organization without being dismissed as a hype?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question. Of course, I don't know the organization, and I don't know the dynamic of what the culture is and what's driving the the next year's budget or the strategic plan 5 years out. But I can honestly say that if you're part of an organization that's looking for something that's next generation, and if you have a level of understanding that a lot of the problems you see today in payables and receivables, or transaction management and global trust, it seems like in your gut, blockchain is a good fit. There probably is a good fit. At that point, I suggest doing maybe like we did with RoadLaunch. We already had a great platform in place, but before we just said we were a blockchain company, we actually did a lot of work to say, what would it mean to do it? Does it make sense from a smart contract standpoint? Will people care if we were to implement it? Will we be able to actually change the business and the operations of our partners or our customers? And for us, all those checks started lining up. So we went to work. But for you, you know your business well, and if those checks start lining up, then maybe it's good. If they don't, well, maybe not, right?
And we have a last question from Craig Sanders. Craig, thanks very much. Is the transshipment model still relevant, and now more efficient, or has management tools such as IBM blockchain negated the need for such strategies?
It's a good question. I mean, for us, it's a little bit of a tough question to answer. We're still a very small and young company, but growing fast. Other companies like IBM is fantastic, because we are, we're a partner of IBM's, and we've done great work together. I think to some point maybe it can negate. Other times that maybe the ship is just too big and a little bit too slow to turn. But somewhere in the middle is probably there's probably the good or the right answer to that question.
Cory, thanks very much, Craig. Hope that answered your question, and to Ernesto and everyone else asking questions. Jim, thank you very much. Cory, on behalf of IERG, a huge thanks for devoting your time to us today on this fascinating topic. It was very, very useful. I guess there's a lot more to cover, and it's impossible to cover the entire subject in an hour. But this was an immensely useful overview. So, Cory, once again, thank you so much. We really, really enjoyed it. To all our members and guests dialing in, thank you very much for doing so. Please check our website for upcoming events. Do follow us on LinkedIn so you can get the news first. And then all that remains for me to say is happy holidays to everyone. Take good care, and all the best. Thank you for dialing in, and we'll be back in January. Happy holidays all, and thank you for dialing in. On behalf of IERG, goodbye.